Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum dear students. Hope you all are fine. My name is Sumbul Kamar and I welcome you all in computer class of grade 5. Dear students, the textbook we are following in grade 5 is eSkills Learner Level 5, and from this tutorial you will be able to understand module number 2, that is processing and storage, and I am going to explain a new topic from task processing is CPU, role of CPU, and the architecture of computer. The introduction of this task is processing is the most important operation as it is responsible for converting data into information. So my dear students, by the end of this tutorial, you will be able to revise the features of CPU, you will be able to revise the role of CPU, and you will be able to revise the architecture of computer. Now students, let's have a quick recap of previous topics. Data means elements which are entered to be processed that cannot be checked and cannot be trusted. Information means the result of processing data that can be checked and can be trusted. And processing is the most important computer operation that converts data into information. Now students, let's understand the CPU. CPU stands for Central Processing Unit. It is considered to be the brain of a computer as it executes commands of a program given by the user. It determines the computer's processing speed. It also communicates with other computer units through the various sockets located on the motherboard. It also stores the information which results from the processing. The CPU is responsible for executing a sequence of stored instructions given by the user through input devices. As a result, processed information is displayed on output devices. Now students, let's discuss the next topic, that is role of CPU. The role of the CPU is important as it determines how other associated material should be organized. It also analyzes the peripheral devices attached to the CPU or processor that either they are working systematically or not. It defines the architecture of computer. This is the basic architecture of computer. Input devices are those devices that can be used to insert data or program into the computer. For example, input devices are keyboard, mouse, scanner, and joystick. CPU. CPU stands for Central Processing Unit. It is the main processor that controls all the data activities of a computer. It has three main units: control unit, ALU, arithmetic and logical unit, and memory. Output devices. Output devices are those devices that are used to output the final result processed by the computer. The processed result will be displayed on monitor, and the examples are monitor, printer, speaker, and headphones. These are the three simple input and output systems. Input unit is used to enter data into the computer. Like for example, we have keyboard, mouse, scanner, and joystick. In processing takes place in the processing unit, and the processing unit is CPU, Central Processing Unit. It has three main units: memory, CU, that is control unit, ALU, arithmetic and logical unit. And in output, we get the output on the output units. For example, monitor, printer, headphones, and speaker. Now students, we will going to watch a video that will going to recall all the basic concepts that you learned.
Do you remember when you first realized that your computer was more than just a monitor and keyboard? That between the mouse click and the video playing, there was something that captured your attention, understood it, and made it real? What is that something? Is it gremlins? Let's imagine that we can shrink down to the size of an electron and inject ourselves into a click of a mouse. If you took your mouse apart, you'd see that it's really a very simple machine. It has a couple buttons and a system for detecting motion and distance. You might have an optical mouse that makes these measurements with lights and sensors, but older ones did this with a hard rubber ball and some plastic wheels. Same concept. When you click the button on your mouse, it sends a message to the computer with information about its position. When your mouse click is received, it's handled by the basic input-output subsystem. This subsystem acts like the eyes and ears and mouth and hands of the computer. Basically, it provides a way for the computer to interact with its environment. But it also acts like a buffer to keep the CPU from being overwhelmed by distractions. In this case, the I/O subsystem decides that your mouse click is pretty important, so it generates an interrupt to the CPU. Hey CPU, got a click here. The CPU, or Central Processing Unit, is the brains of the whole computer. Just like your brain doesn't take up your whole body, the CPU doesn't take up the whole computer, but it runs the show all the same. And the CPU's job, its whole job, is fetching instructions from memory and executing them. So while you're typing, maybe really fast, like 60 words a minute, the CPU is fetching and executing billions of instructions a second. Yes, billions, every second. Instructions to move your mouse around on the screen, to run that clock widget on your desktop, play your internet radio, manage the files you're editing on the hard drive, and much, much more. Your computer's CPU is one heck of a multitasker. But oh my gosh, there's a very important mouse click coming through now. Let's drop everything now and deal with that. There are programs for everything that the CPU does. A special program for the mouse, for the clock widget, for the internet radio, and for dealing with letters sent by the keyboard. Each program was initially written by a human in a human-readable programming language like Java, C++, or Python. But human programs take up a lot of space and contain a lot of unnecessary information to a computer, so they're compiled and made smaller and stored in bits of ones and zeros in memory. The CPU realizes that it needs instructions for how to deal with this mouse click, so it looks up the address for the mouse program and sends a request to the memory subsystem for instructions stored there. Each instruction in the mouse device driver is duly fetched and executed. And that's not nearly the end of the story. Because the CPU learns that the mouse was clicked when the cursor was over a picture of a button on the monitor screen, and so the CPU asks memory for the monitor program to find out what that button is. And then the CPU has to ask memory for the program for the button, which means that the CPU needs the monitor program again to show the video associated with the button, and so it goes. And let's just say that there are a lot of programs involved before you even see the button on the screen light up when you clicked it. So just the simple task of clicking your mouse means visiting all of the critical components of your computer's architecture. Peripherals, the basic input-output system, the CPU, programs, and memory, and not one gremlin.
Now students, let's discuss about the quiz for this week. Question number 1. Name any 3 input devices. Question number 2. Name any 3 output devices. And question number 3 is why CPU is known as brain of the computer. Students, you have to solve these questions on A4 paper or on any single loose sheet. So students, after revising all the topics, now I am going to share you questions for reinforcement. You have to attempt these questions on computer paper or on loose sheets. Question number 1 is define role of CPU. And question number 2 is define simple input and output systems. So dear students, hopefully you all understood today's lesson. Take care and thank you.